Hi, and welcome to SYCL 360. It's my pleasure to be here today with Dr. Kalen Olson, who is Medical Officer and Head of Medical Affairs at Siemens Healthineers. Hi, Kalen, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me to come here, Joe.
So, Kalen, we're here today to talk about your experience going from a laboratory director to somebody who's now working in industry. Can you please describe to us your current position and what your day-to-day activities look like?
Sure. So as a medical officer at Siemens Healthineers, I do a variety of jobs, and our main responsibility as an overarching summary is that we assure that our clinical products are safe and effective. So that requires a lot of work, not only in the beginning of developing products, so all along the product development process, as we call it, but also once a product is out on the market to make sure that we can maintain the performance of the product and make sure that it's useful for our laboratorians, useful for our clinician customers. And so as a medical officer, we are responsible for assuring that we help set guidelines for how our product needs to perform, what are the requirements when we're designing it to perform, what kind of specifications that we need to do in order to make sure that it is a useful product. No one wants to obviously make a product that in the end isn't useful. So we interact with all different kinds of functional groups across our business to help as a team develop the best product that we can. And then once again, to maintain that product and make sure that our customers are happy and that we can make useful products for everyone.
So then, Kalen, how much of your time are you spending talking to clients directly versus working on a specific project, quality improvement for Siemens?
So at different companies, medical officers or medical affairs do different things. Sometimes it's actually even called a different name at a different company. You might be called scientific affairs. There's clinical affairs. There's some positions where you are interacting with the customer on a day-to-day basis. For example, maybe designing a clinical study using your product. Maybe it's for some sort of a new use that someone is interested in. Maybe it's for just a new product that's going to come out on the market and you want more data or more data for a current use of that product. So some people interact with customers a lot to design studies or make sure that the customer is giving us input into what kind of products that we should be making or how we should be improving our products. The other side of the job that we also perform for us as a medical officer at Siemens Healthineers, at least, is a lot of it is more internal, where we're talking with our internal teams on a day-to-day basis to do the rest of the work. So it kind of depends on the day. Then one of the nice things about industry is it's very diverse in what we get to do. So you might be talking to a customer one day, and then the next day you're working with a lot of internal folks working on the products. So it depends, and depending on which company you're working for, they might have different requirements. You might get to travel and talk to customers, or you might be working in one place or moving around. So it's one of the benefits that I've seen. It's a global business, so you get to do a lot of different responsibilities and interact with a lot of different people on a daily basis.
And how was that transition for you from a lab director to your current position?
Yeah, it was definitely eye-opening. I've been now working in industry for 3 years, and I think on a daily basis, I learn something new. So the good thing about the job is that I have learned so many things that as a laboratory director, it would have been really helpful to know. It would have been helpful to know why investigations take as long as they do when maybe there's something wrong that you're seeing with the result, or there's something with your particular instrument, or to understand the background of how those products are maintained, what kind of quality control goes into them, how much it takes in order to investigate something. For example, as a laboratory director, you have access to all the clinical information in the electronic medical record. When you're at a laboratory diagnostics company, you only get what you're given by the laboratory, and so it makes it much more difficult to investigate things. And you also don't have a ton of samples from patients available to you. So to be able to get samples that are the ones that you need to do investigations can also be challenging. So there's certain challenges that you can see when you're working in the industry side. But the great thing is that I personally never thought I would go into the industry, but the great thing is that we've been able to take our experience as laboratory directors, which has been one of the best things that we're able to do for the company, and say, this is how things really happen in the laboratory on a day-to-day basis. Because some of the people at these companies have never worked in a laboratory. Some of them have, a lot of them have, but some of them definitely haven't, or they haven't for a long period of time. So we're able to take that experience and say, this is what the laboratory needs, or this is what the clinician needs, this is how it really, works. So we've been able not only to learn about how better to understand, the intricacies of what industry needs to do for their products, but also then feedback and give our experience to help make everything hopefully better for our customers.
And so that's great. I mean, you touched on the great points and what you've learned from that experience. Are there any components from being a lab director that you miss, perhaps? Like, I know some people may have fears of like not having enough academic activity or not being able to go to conferences, which is not the case. Obviously, we see, we meet at AECC every year. So I'm just trying to make sure, like, okay, discredit some of the maybe wrong assumptions that are made about industry positions. So are there any things that you miss and things that you still have that maybe people otherwise thought you wouldn't if you weren't a lab director?
Yeah, we definitely still go to a lot of conferences. We sit on committees, for example, for IFCC or AACC. Obviously, I'm on the SYCL core committee for AACC, and actually our participation in those kinds of committees and conferences is promoted in my job, because part of my job is to understand clinical practice, laboratory practice, in order to be able to feed that back to the company and make our products a better product. So all the different people that I've talked to, that now are working in industry, and there are a lot more lab directors going that direction, and then also going back to the laboratory can only help your job. And so we still get to do that. We also get to go and interact with our colleagues still in the laboratories to make sure that we understand what's going on. So it's invaluable to be able to go back and still interact with everyone.
Stay up to date.
Yeah, exactly. And because we're not in the laboratory anymore. So that is a drawback. You're not the one sitting in the laboratory. So the longer you have outside of being a lab director, the more you can lose touch. So you really have to make sure that you maintain the keeping in touch with what's going on in the lab, since you're not there every day anymore. And I do miss being in a hospital, seeing patients walking around, seeing nurses and doctors, and you really feel that you can see who you're helping. So sometimes I think in industry it can be a little bit more difficult to see the end user, the patients that you're helping. But at the same time, I think it's one of those that you just remind yourself, not only am I helping, you used to help one hospital and health system, and it is important, and it's a pretty big scale, especially for at a large system like I was. But at the same time, working for a company that sells products globally, you learn about global practices so much more, the differences between the U.S. and outside the U.S. and different countries and regulations, and you really can feel like you have to remember how many millions or billions of people that you're helping. You're probably touching a large portion of the population of the globe. So if you're working at such a large company, so it's very rewarding.
No, I agree. And finally, Kalyn, any specific advice or recommendations you'd give to a SYCL member who is, or even an ACC member who is considering making a move to industry or applying for that first position in industry?
Yeah. I would say, I think one of the main things is just to be open to industry. Like I said, I thought that I would never want to go into the side of industry, but you really can, make a big difference in industry. And I think what you learn working in industry can only help you as a laboratory director. Obviously, you can go back to being a laboratory director, and people have done that. I think people used to think that it was difficult, but it's definitely, people have been doing that lately. So it's one of those things that I think if you're just open to the possibilities of learning, and I think all you can do is just really get your hands-on experience in the laboratory to be able to contribute to the company and that unique perspective that you can offer. the more the better. So that's why, Siemens has come up with a program to bring laboratory directors to the company to help them learn more. And I think the more that we're able to do that kind of interaction with any kind of IVD company, the more the better for everybody, the customers and those working in industry.
No, I agree. Thank you very much for your advice and for your time, Kalyn. I really appreciate all the advice you give our members.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching.